Today is August the 22nd. This is Connie Mason, and I'm interviewing here at the Corsound Waterfowl Museum, Miss Margaret Daniels. Margaret.
Hey, how you doing, Connie?
Good to see you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Not a problem. As I told you, I don't have a problem talking. It's a problem getting me to shut up.
Well, I got plenty of tape, so we'll be all right.
What you want to talk about?
Well, I'd like to have your mom and dad's names and where they were from and where you grew up.
My father's name was Julian Earl Daniels, and he was from Cedar Island. And my mother was Millie Evelyn Day when she married Dad, and she also was from Cedar Island. Their parents, Daddy's parents was Louis Daniels and Janetti Daniels, and Mother's was John David Day and Medora Day. Mm-hmm. And my grandparents, both sets of my grandparents, were the founding members of the Pilgrim's Rest Free Will Baptist Church, the Cedar Island.
Oh, that's a lovely church.
And Lewis's Creek, where they got Cedar Island used to be Lola and Roe, and when you grew up around there, it's always at the bay and down the bay. I lived down the bay, Lola.
That's down the bay, okay.
Yeah, that's down the bay. And at the end of the road on Lola is Lewis's Creek, and that was named after my granddaddy.
And it's spelled
Lewis, not Louis.
Right.
Yeah. And my brother's middle name is Lewis, just like granddaddy's was. And when the Navy come in there, Daddy owned land. Of course, most of it was marshland, but he owned that area where the boat ramps at. Mm-hmm. And he had to sell it to the Navy. They were going to condemn it anyway.
The Navy, actually? I didn't know that the Navy had some interest there.
Yeah, but see, when they put that tracking station down the bay to track submarines during the Cold War, there was a lot. Let's see, there was Mr. Walter Goodwin. He lived down there. Aunt Florence and Uncle Joe Smith, they lived there. And Wilbur, and I can't remember his wife's name, Goodwin lived down there. Uh-huh. And they made them all sell their houses and move. And Aunt Florence and Uncle Joe, they were so mad, they burnt their house down. They were old people. And they come in and put that tracking station there and never utilized it.
Is that what that big conical
That's
tower
what that cone tower, that was part of the tracking station. It was
for the Navy?
Yeah, there was a great big radar connected to it.
A dish?
Yeah, a dish radar, yeah.
Wow.
And then it ended up with the wildlife people. And that's good, I'm glad it did. Yeah. But it displaced a lot of people.
Yeah, it did.
Because my daddy's first wife was Aunt Florence and Uncle Joe's daughter. And it gets to be a little bit of a controversy or a little stiff there, because the minute that we moved away from Cedar Island when I was 6 years old, and we moved to Williston, to I thought the most hostile place I had ever seen in my life.
Oh, really?
Well, the first day we were there, I'm not going to try to mention any names.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, don't mention names.
No, there was this young boy about my age, told me to step in this patch of grass. I'm from Cedar Island and I'm used to perry pads.
Yes.
I stepped into a patch of what's called stickers.
Oh.
And them things stuck to the sole of my feet, and I never forgot that. 2 days later, I got bit by a rattlesnake.
No.
I stepped on him. I felt like Daddy had moved us, and I was only 6 years old, into a snake pit. That was the most snakes I'd ever seen in my life, everywhere you looked.
What kind of snake was it?
Rattlesnakes. Rattlesnakes and red oaks and copperheads and moccasin.
What did you get bit by?
A rattlesnake.
A rattlesnake?
I stepped on him. Must have made him mad.
I bet.
And he turned around and popped it to me. And that in itself is a funny tale, because I thought, have you ever stepped on a stop and how it sticks in you?
Yeah.
That's what I thought had happened. Until my sister said, well, there's a snake. And I didn't think any more about it. I ran in the house to tell Daddy. And he ran out. No, Daddy couldn't run. His knees were too bad. He hobbled out. Because my daddy was old when his second family come along. But anyway, he hobbled out and I guess killed the snake. And I don't know why my mother asked me, did anybody get bit? I said, no. She said, well, what's that on your ankle? and you can see the fang marks and the blood dripping. Okay, you live in the Williston, and there is no sea level hospital at that particular time. So you have to go to Moorhead, and there certainly were no ambulance service. So we're going to go to Beaufort to Dr. Moore. Now you need to understand, my daddy never drove any faster than 35 miles an hour. That day, and I'll never forget it, that man got a speeding ticket.
No.
Probably the only speeding ticket he ever got in his life.
Well, it seems like the police would forgive it since your daughter's been bit by a snake.
I had no idea how fast he was going, but I was getting slung around in that car. I do remember that.
Wow. So did it swell up and everything?
Oh, yeah. Primitive conditions back then. We go into the weight room, and I'm sick, so I'm retaining a lot of this.
Yeah.
And we sat down, and Mother doesn't mention that I've been bit by a rattlesnake. We just sat down waiting for our turn. And this woman asked her, what happened to your child? Oh, she got bit by a rattlesnake. Well, that was the greatest commotion I've ever seen in my life. Well, they got me in the back, and Dr. Moore, and I'm just a yelling. He cuts, slits, and puts my foot in a bedpan to bleed. Now, I had to stay in bed for about a week, but it never slowed me down.
That's a remarkable story.
Yeah, but
you could have been out of here.
Yeah, I could have,
Was it one of those small?
It was about 2 feet long. It don't make no difference. They're still poisonous.
Yeah, I know, but still, oh my God.
But yeah, there used to be a lot of snakes. My uncle Falcher lived next door to us. He would build boats under his oak tree like a lot of men down east did. And I think about that now. Back then I thought it was stupid, all them leaves getting in the boat. So us youngins, it took him a while to build a boat because he was an old man. And we'd always play around them. And there was the most rattlesnakes and red oak snakes that's ever been around there. And we were forever killing them. So I grew up with that mess.
Oh,
so that was another strike against Williston. And every Sunday, because see, Daddy worked at Cherry Point, and that's why we moved to Williston. Plus, his sister lived there, and one of his daughters had married there.
Oh, I see.
So we and his brother, Uncle Waddell, lived to Marshallburg. So most of his people, there was none of his people lived on Cedar Island except his oldest daughter. So every Sunday, we knew what we were going to do. We'd go to Cedar Island. Now, I remember Daddy only drove 35 miles an hour. So we start early, and it was before the bypass, so you had to go through Sea Level and Atlantic. And we used to sing hymns all the way there.
Oh, how nice.
And my youngest sister, I won't ever forget it. She wasn't but 3 years old, and she was talking some. But we started singing, and it was Amazing Grace. And she just chimed up and sang that whole song. And we're all looking at her. But bless her heart, she'd already gone through a lot. When she was born crying. When they brought her home, she was crying. She cried 24 hours a day for 3 years. I begged Mother and Daddy, we all did, to please take her back where they got her. Come to find out she had appendicitis.
Oh, my stars.
And my world had come to an end when me and my brother got off the school bus and walked down that lane. And my Aunt Vivian met us in the yard and said, your Mother and Daddy's to the hospital. And we used to call her Tiny. Her name was Carol. We're Tiny. They're having to do surgery, and you got to stay with me. Well, we thought we were deserted. We just knew we were orphans, so they're never going to come back for us no more. It was a bad time. But anyway, we'd go to Cedar Island. We'd spend all day there. And I was lucky, I guess, because I had a vacation every summer. I went to Cedar Island and spent it with grandmother.
Mm-hmm. And where was her house? On the Lola Road?
Yeah, on the Lola Road. Do you know where Ralph Brittenham lives?
No, I'm afraid not.
He bought my Uncle Earl's house, and it was a house in the back. It had a living room and a dining room, and it had 6 rooms. It was living room, dining room, kitchen, and 3 bedrooms on the other side. And had the only electricity in it was a single bulb hanging from the ceilings.
No kidding.
In all the rooms. And that was it. No indoor plumbing whatsoever. She had an outhouse out back that we had to go to. And she cooked with a kerosene stove and oven that stunk to high heaven. Now, my grandmother was 4'11". Almost as big as round she was tall. But I loved my grandmother. We all did. You know, and me and my sister next to me, or me and my brother, would go spend all summer and just play with my cousins.
And what was her name again?
Medora.
Medora
Storm Day.
Day. Okay.
Yep, Medora.
So are you kin to Martha Day?
Martha is married to probably my third cousin, Art Paul, was my cousin. I'm not kin to Martha. But Art Paul was. But
how about Jean Day?
Jane Day is married to my first cousin, Virgil.
I actually visited Virgil like 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
About that song that she wrote about, you know, about the damn buffaloes. And he sang it for me.
Yeah.
And I learned it from Virgil.
Have you heard Oysters in Heaven?
I have heard about it.
You got to hear it in the other song, Pilgrim.
Kevin?
Robert.
There is a song about Kevin, though, right?
Yeah,
I got killed in the
Daniel.
war.
Daniel. Oh, there's a song about Tiny, too. He's not. That was Virgil's brother. But his son, Robert, wrote Oysters in Heaven and also Pilgrim's Rest, the church. And they're both, I love both of them.
Oh, I
love Oysters in Heaven. I'm crazy about that one. Everybody else is. But anyway, and when I was growing up, Virgil and Jane lived right next door to my grandmother.
Okay.
And had those 5 aggravating boys. Yeah.
But you came from a musical family, that Day family.
Oh, the Day family is well known. I did not get any of that.
But you sang hymns when you were going?
I love music, and I love to sing, but I can't carry a tune in the barrel. But, you know, living there, we had a summer vacation. We'd go down there and spend it with grandmother. And as she got older, you know, we were old enough to realize that wasn't going to happen very much longer. Because I won't ever forget one day, she fried us spots. I love spots. And we sat down to the table, me and my sister, and the heads were on them, with the eyeballs in them. My daddy cut the head off.
Oh, yeah.
And she was eating, and all of a sudden she said, "What's the matter, youngins? We can't eat this, Grandmother. Don't hurt her feelings." I mean, the woman was old. "Why can't you eat it?" "It's got the heads on it, and the eyes are looking at us." "Well, how does Earl Daniels do it?" He cuts the heads off. And about that time, my cousin come in and popped the eyeballs out and ate them. I died. I went away here. Oh, my God. And then she'd always cook us biscuits and scrambled eggs for breakfast. Well, it got to be, The biscuits were black because the oven was sitting up. Oh. And they were so hard, I'm not lying, I threw one at a tree one time, it never broke. And the eggs were that way too, and our eyesight got so bad. So she would always fix us breakfast, put it on the table, and she'd go in the front room, get in a rocking chair, get out her beach nut chewing gum, turn that great old big radio on to Oral Roberts, and that's where she sat. And while we ate breakfast, we'd sneak out the back doors and throw it in the woods, not to hurt her feelings. Did not want my grandmother to know we couldn't eat that. That's right.
She did the best she could for you.
Yep. And the woman went to church every time church was open. And I won't ever forget, you know how teenage girls, and we were 12, 13, 14 years old. There was a man on Cedar Island had a convertible. And one Sunday morning, it was me and my sister and my 2 cousins, Kay and Lorna, was walking to church. Well, down the bay, it wasn't very far to walk. I mean, it's just not that deep. And he rode by and wanted to know if we wanted to go riding. We knew better than that, but in we piled. He took us up the bay, and then he took us out onto the thoroughfare road, and we kept telling him we got to get back to church. We got to get to church. So when we drove up, we could hear them praying, and it was Miss Daisy Lupton, and we knew it was going to be a long prayer. We had it made. We could just sneak right in. So here we go, all four of us sneaking in, and he let down and blared that horn. And my grandmother, who always sat on the very front pew, leaned around and cocked that finger at us. And we had all four of us go sit on that front pew. We knew we had it. She just looked at us.
That's all it took, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But, I enjoyed Cedar Island, and when people ask me, I usually tell them I'm from Cedar Island. Mm-hmm. But it's not because I don't want to tell them I'm from Williston. Mm-hmm. Because as I have gotten older, I realize that I probably grew up in the best of times. Mm-hmm. Because when I think back in Williston, you got two sides of a bridge. On the side that I lived on, which was closer to Davis, there was 30-something kids that were in 4 or 5 years of each other. And on the other side of the bridge, there was almost the same thing. You had two gangs of youngins, groups of youngins. We all played together. We were never bored. I mean, everybody raised us, now that I think about it. We'd go down there back at Elma Willis's, and we'd take anybody's skip out we wanted to, as long as it didn't have a motor on it. We were not allowed to run a motor. Mm-hmm. And if we stayed too long, somebody would go out in their shrimp boat and tell us to come on back in. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, we were actually raised by a community. Yeah. And there was just so many of us that was, almost the same age. I remember one year, Halloween, oh Lord, we had a preacher and his wife, and nobody liked the wife. Because her first statement when she moved to Williston, she did not marry a preacher, and she wasn't married to a preacher now as far as she was concerned.
Oh, dear.
Well, when they got married, he wasn't a preacher. So she had this little bitty car. I don't know what kind of car it was. It was the littlest thing I have ever seen in my life. It looks like one of them Mini Coupes, about that size. Yeah. I mean, this was years ago. So, that night, we got a block and tackle. And the boys cleaned up the pine tree with that block and tackle.
Oh, my God.
And we rolled that car around back because it was a straight shift. And wasn't locked, of course. And we blocked and tackled that thing up that pine tree. About 20 feet in the air. Back of our house. And the next day we got on a school bus. That was really the first time we got to get a look at what we done. And we all got tickled. And we went on to school and never thought no more about it. Well, half of Williston was waiting for us. And we didn't get home. They stopped us right there to the church.
Oh, my stars.
I mean, the parents did. And made us get out and get that car out of that tree. It was harder to come down than it was to go up.
Oh, my gosh. Well, it was more exciting for it to go up than come down.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That's a great story. That's a great story. Now, did your father worked at Cherry Point?
Yeah, he was a painter, a contractor.
Mm-hmm. But did he ever fish in his life? Or?
He oystered, never fished. He oystered. He was in the Coast Guard, and then he. Where
was he stationed in the Coast Guard?
New Jersey for one place.
Okay.
I don't remember where else. If I knew, I never paid that much attention to it.
Sure.
Because, like I said, my daddy was old when he started his second family.
Right.
And my half sister raised me, Helen. She was a good mother to me, and took good care of me. Because one of the first memory I think I ever had was we were the grandmothers, and I was crying. And Helen had to go out and hang clothes out, and that's why I was crying. Because she always rocked me. And that's my first memory. My second memory is my grandmother in the yard with a garden hoe scaling a drum.
With a hoe?
The fish was that big. I bet you that thing was 6 foot long.
No.
Her and Uncle Earl are scaling that drum. And the reason I know it's a drum, I heard somebody mention minced drum. And I must have ate some of it because I can't stand that stuff. I don't like minced drum, don't like drum puree. But yeah, that was a big fish.
With a hoe. Well, that's cool. That's cool. Did you ever, or any of your family ever work for the fish house there in Williston?
Nope. Oh yeah, that's a lie. My mother did.
Uh-huh.
Only it's not a fish house, it's the clam house.
Clam house.
It was never a fish house, it was a clam house.
Uh-huh.
I worked there too.
Uh-huh.
My mother, after Daddy retired and his knees got so bad, it's basically after he died, Mother went to work there. And that in itself is a bunch of funny tales. I mean, let's see, I was an LPN, and I decided I didn't want to be a nurse. So I got away from it. I'm going to work to the clam house. Oh my God. Now I wasn't but, let's see, about 20, 21. Spit and vinegar. Could move the world. Mm-hmm. Well, them 60, 70, 80-year-old women quit showing me that I couldn't do nothing. Mm-hmm. I've never seen people work so hard in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, you go in, and that's when he was shucking scallops, when Elmer had a lot of scallops coming in. You go in at 6 o'clock of the mornings, and you would clean and package and shuck scallops till 2 o'clock the next morning to go home long enough to get a bath and get 2 hours sleep to get up and do it again 7 days a week. Because he had a great thing going there. Mm-hmm. That there shucking machine that he had was just unreal.
Yeah, he had lots of patents, didn't he?
Oh, yes, he did.
A lot of stuff.
Yep. That you scoop them scallops out the back of a trailer truck and you put them in a vat, and they go down a conveyor belt and drop into that conveyor belt drops into hot water. It kept going out. And what that did was open the shell up. Then it would get onto what was called a shaker. And what it was a great big piece of metal. I guess it was aluminum. And it had holes in it. And it was big enough for a scallop to drop through. And it was on springs, and it would shake them scallops and guts out of that shell. And the shell would go one way and the scallops would go the other. Then it would drop down onto what we call the rollers. It looked like rollers about, 3 or 4 feet long that had looked like sandpaper on them. And they would roll back and forth, and they'd roll the gut off of them as they fell down because it was on the incline. And when they got down to the table, it was a pretty white scallop, sea scallop.
Wow.
And everything's fine as long as everything's working okay. But if the water wasn't hot enough, there's all these scallops flying out of that building, and you're out there trying to gather them up. Or 2, if they get speeded up, here they come, and you're almost drowned with scallops coming off that conveyor belt at you. But them women, I've never seen nothing. They take their BC power and their Coca-Cola, and off they go again. I could not work them. I finally decided nursing was not such a bad job after all.
So how did you decide to go into nursing to begin with?
That itself was just a fluke.
Yeah.
There wasn't that many jobs when I got.
Did it have anything to do with that emergency room experience with snake bite or anything?
No, it did not. No, because I was in Dr. Moore's office. I wasn't in the emergency room. I started working at Sea Level Hospital as a nurse and aide right after I got out of high school in 65. And I'd been there about a year when I went to work one day, and Jay Morris and Eunice Honeycutt called me in the office. Well, I figured I was getting fired. That was the director of nurses and the assistant director of nurses. And they said, we signed you up for LPN school and you start Monday. Well, believe it or not, I was kind of intimidated by them, so I can't hardly believe anybody intimidates me now.
Not now, but...
Not now. Back then, yeah. And I said, okay. And they sent me to school. It happened to be, LPN school back then. It was the 3rd year that Carteret Community College had it, and it was taught at sea level.
Oh.
In a house beside the hospital, and you did most of your training at Sea Level Hospital.
Is the house still there?
Yeah, it is. When you go to, where East Wing's at? the very long wing.
Yeah.
You go down there, and there's a road that goes down beside it that goes towards the water.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little house sitting right on the corner down there. And that's where it was at.
Oh.
Taught by Miss Ruth Morris.
Ruth Morris.
Yeah, and she just died the other day.
Oh.
Anyway, so that's how I got started at LPN
it was free.
School. Yeah, didn't cost me nothing.
That's amazing.
They didn't ask for nothing. They just decided they were going to send me to school. And so I worked sea level until about 74. And I was in a car wreck and got messed up real bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I broke my neck.
Oh,
and so I was a patient there for 12 weeks.
Mm.
And so that's when I decided I wanted to shut scallops.
Well, you'd had enough of the medical.
Yeah, I'd had enough of it. But I had a lot of experience at Sea Level Hospital. You know, there was some good doctors and there was some excellent nurses. And I look back now, and of course, medicine has advanced so much, it was like we were practicing primitive times compared to what it is today. Mm-hmm. But the care was the best care you could ever possibly have there. I mean, you're treated like a queen. I don't care who you were. Mm-hmm. You know, you weren't kicked out 2 days after you got in there. And of course, people didn't have hospital insurance like they got today. Mm-hmm. You know, and it was so advanced in some technology and some of the equipment that we had, you know, that it was unreal.
Who were some of the doctors?
Dr. Webb had, he was in the process of leaving when I first got there. And there was Dr. Kendall, Dr. Peacock, and Dr. Best were the main ones. And they were the whole time I was there. I was very fortunate that they were there most of the time. Of course, Dr. Peacock died in that process. He had a stroke. I used to say he had a little man syndrome. He'd get so angry at the nursing staff. But he loved his patients. He would give us all kind of problems and stuff. But it was just a good place in lots and lots of ways.
What kind of things could they treat at the hospital?
Well, they treat almost anything. In fact, when I got in my car wreck, I went to Carteret General, and they said there was nothing the matter. And the next morning I went to Sea Level, and that's when they found it. And they should have sent me to, they tried to send me to Greenville to have a halo put on, and I refused. So they kept me in bed with 35 pounds of traction on my neck. You ever try to stay in bed with 35 pounds of traction under your chin? It'll pulling you up.
Oh, my God.
You know.
I think I might have opted for the halo.
Well, I was stupid and stubborn. I didn't want to. I was scared to death, too.
Sure.
After I found out I done some stupid stuff. But we could handle almost anything. You know, if it got too complicated, we'd send it out. Like one time, Dr. Peacock was going to do a hip replacement on a lady from Atlantic. She had fallen. She was a school teacher and broke her hip. Very obese. He got right in the middle of it and realized that he could not do it. She was under anesthesia, and they brought her out and shipped her out, you know. And it was saying, you know, stuff like that. But most anything we could handle. Mm-hmm. And we handled some strange things in our life. You know, the people from Atlantic Beach over that way that owned all these businesses, they have problems with drinking and sobering up. We come to Sea Level to detox.
So you had a lot of DDT patients.
A lot. And we had a lot from down east too, but, you know, where the local imbibers.
It was a recreational activity.
Yes, it was. I mean, very much so. And we had one, he came through the emergency room and he was just wasted. He was from Atlantic Beach. And so one of our bright nurses went to move his car. And she weren't too bright herself, evidently. We'll not even go into that. She backed the car out, and it was a great big Cadillac, and was pulling it up in front of the pharmacy and hit the accelerator instead of the brake, went through the pharmacy, and when we got out there, we just rolled because on the hood was this great big sign that says, "Do you need glasses?" Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, and we had the ambulance that we had, because there was no rescue squads. The ambulance we had was an old station wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we had to go anywhere, that's what you went in. And it was room for a stretcher. And I remember the lady that was obese, me and the orderlies took turns, and along with the pharmacist, to drive the ambulance. And you need to understand that one of our orderlies was in his 60s, which was old back then. The pharmacist was very skinny and pruny. And I'll not mention his name. So if you got all of them, you knew you were in trouble. Well, I got a hold of the orderly that had never drove an automatic.
Hold on just a minute. Let me turn this. Okay.
He only knew how to drive a straight shift. So, I tell him, put your foot on the brake and move the lever to R. And he did. I said, take your foot off the brake and onto the accelerator. Well, we ended up in a shrub. I said, okay. Well, finally, we hunched along for a little while. And I finally said, just let me drive. Please let me drive. So off to Atlantic we go. Well, when we went to get the stretcher right at the back, couldn't get the thing unlocked. So he took it apart. Well, that's fine. I said, now how are we going to get this patient on it? It's apart. So we got it together, got in there, and the house is one of these older houses where the rooms are small and there ain't no corners and you have trouble. Well, this set this woman up to the top of that stairs, and she covered the whole stairway. And I looked at her, and I looked at that stretcher, and I looked at that orderly, and I thought, oh, this is not good.
This is not a good sign.
I go up there, and I talk to her a little while, and I had to get that woman to hobble down on her good leg to get her down. And then I had to get her to hobble right, because we had to take the stretcher apart to get it in the house. Got it in the ambulance, then couldn't get it locked. And back then, we weren't allowed to wear pantsuits. We had dresses.
Oh, no.
Now, I'm sitting in the back on the floor with a dress on, and my feet pushed against that stretcher, and this woman weighed almost 400 pounds. Oh. And every time he'd go around, and I had to let him drive, every time we went around the curve, that stretcher would come towards me. I said, if this ain't a scrape, greatest scrapes ever been. But that, and the anesthesiologist, she went one time on a call. It was her and the pharmacist. And they had to take a patient to Greenville. And on the way back, because I usually work the night shift, she called. And it was garbled. But all we could hear was, we've wrecked a mule. That's all. Come to find out, on the way back home, they run into a mule, killed the mule, and totaled the ambulance. Oh, God. Oh, God. I said, Lord help us.
That's horrible.
Yeah,
that's so funny. But that's so funny.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, tell me, yesterday when we were talking, you told me one of the greatest things, because I repeated it to my mother last night, and she says, that's right, that's how they felt about it. When you were talking about fishing with a net versus a rod and reel.
God.
Tell me about that.
Well, as I told you, I had never owned a rod and reel in my life. You know, if you caught fish, you caught them with a net. You didn't stand there and throw a little string over and pray that a fish would honor you with catching it. I bet only dingbatters did that. So my best friend got married, and he had a boat. So we went out trolling. And I was worried about being seasick, and all of a sudden, a fish hit that line. And now you got to remember, I never had a rod and reel in my hand.
And you were 40?
I was 40. Let's see, they got married, I was 41.
Right.
And instinct took over, evidently. I grabbed that rod, and he had to tell me what to do, but I was determined. And it was a Spanish mackerel. And 29 Spanish mackerel later, I was hooked, line and sinker. I never owned a hook, never owned a rod or reel, and a week later had 5 of them, every tackle you could think of. And I love to fish today.
Oh, man.
That's so cool. I still love to put a net out when I really want to catch fish, like jumping melons.
Right.
But I love to go out there trolling. My favorite fish in the world is Spanish mackerel.
I told my mother what you said about, you thought people who fish with rod and reel were just idiots.
Idiots? They were idiots. Standing there hoping and praying that a fish would honor them by biting their bait.
And my mother said, "Oh yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right."
Yeah. My brother-in-law had fished with a man from here to Arkansas for a living for a little while, and so my brother-in-law said, "You want to go out there? We're going to set a net off the hook at the Cape." Well, I ain't never been out there at that time. I was probably in my 30s then.
You hadn't been to the Cape and you were 30?
Yeah.
How about that?
So we and the man's wife was supposed to be going too. Well, when I got to the dock, it was me and 3 men.
Oh no.
Okay. Well, it was my brother-in-law and his father. Maybe I'm safe.
Yeah.
It had made no difference. So off we went. Set the net at night. So we set it off the hook at the Cape, and we got a little bit of sleep. And come daylight, we went to fish that net. And I'm sitting, and I have a tendency at times to get a little seasick if I'm sitting constantly bobbing up and down,
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting off to the head of the boat, just looking off. I wasn't interested in what they were doing, pulling the net in. When I heard this thump, and I looked down, and there was a 6-foot hammerhead shark with his mouth wide open looking me right in the eyeball. If I could have walked on water that day, I would have got home quicker than lightning. I ain't never been so scared in my life.
Golly.
Now I laid a cussing on them again.
Did they do it?
They did it deliberately.
Yeah.
Yeah, they threw it at me.
Mm.
I said, what would have happened if that thing landed on me? Well, we don't know about that. Anyway, we fished that net. They got some Spanish, and that's the first time I'd ever eat Spanish. We went back to the big boat. And they fried them up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Wow. Now that was some kind of good. That was good, and I never tasted Spanish again until we went out that day. I got hooked on fishing.
There you go. Well, I just think that's great.
Yeah.
So you didn't go down to Cape Lookout till you were about 30, but did you go across to the banks?
Nope.
Went from Williston at all?
Nope. No, never did.
No. But you could play in anybody's boat.
Anybody's boat. I never did any of that until I finally got a boat of my own. And that was stupid. I bought a brand new car and a brand new boat, both at the same time. And I thought, and it struck me, man, I ain't going to be able to pay for this. And it struck me real quick, the first payments I had to make. So it was summertime, and I was working nights at sea level. Oh, it snowed harbor. And so I would get off work and come home, and me and my youngest sister would put my boat overboard there at Williston. And we'd go stalk clams to the, and we'd come back and we'd come over here to the island and sell on the Wallace Garners. I paid for that boat and that car that summer, stalking clams.
How about that?
I was as black as that there computer.
Oh my stars!
I mean, I would do it till 2 o'clock of the afternoons, and I'd get to bed about 4, and I'd sleep till 10, get up and go to work. So I was sleep on it, and I did that 6 days a week.
Gosh.
And we did.
Isn't it nice to be young?
Yeah, it was. That's probably what's the matter with me now. Well, I've got 2 artificial knees. I stomped too hard.
Oh, you do have artificial knees?
Yeah, I've got artificial knees.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, one of the time, we called it Yellow Shoals. And it was right next to the banks. But one time when me and my sister went over there, I was going along stomping. There was this seagull. He kept following me. I thought, what is this? And I stomped a little while, and he walked right beside me. And
he was walking.
He wasn't but a foot from me, and it was a full-grown seagull. And he just kept following me. So one time, I broke a clam and fed it to him, and he just kept following me. And come to find out, Noreen Fisher was rehabbing some seagulls, and it was one of her seagulls.
Oh, okay.
Because she described it to me. She said, I had seen the band on its leg. I said, well, I just couldn't figure out because he followed me for 8 solid hours.
Oh,
I was getting paranoid.
I hadn't heard Irene Fisher's name in a long time.
Noreen's.
Yeah.
She still rehabs birds.
Oh, she does? Well, that's great.
Yep, she still does.
She used to come to the Waterfowl Festival.
Yep.
And bring some animals that she was rehabbing.
Yeah, very intelligent woman.
Well, what's happened to her now? I mean, I don't see her. She's not out and about a lot.
Well, I guess, she just stays home a lot. Noreen's in her 70s. So, but she makes that daily trip to the store and back. And her son died I don't know, probably about 10 years ago. So he had cystic fibrosis. Oh dear. And he was in his 20s, late 20s. He lived longer than a lot of other people have. Yeah. But she still does birds. She still goes to owls every once in a while and stuff. She used to be a real good carver too.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. And she doesn't carve anymore, I guess.
No, I don't think so.
So do you keep up with her, or?
I only occasionally. I remember one time when I first moved in my house, I was over to Noreen's, and the bird poop everywhere in Noreen's. You just need a shovel to get in and out the house. You got to understand that. She knows that, and she won't get upset if I mention it. But she had this old rocking chair on the front porch that was covered in bird poop. And I said, what are you going to do with that? I don't know, I'm going to throw it away. It's about 125 years old.
Oh, my stars.
I said, can I have it? It took me 3 weeks to get it cleaned up. Oh, my word, I wish you could see that. It has spindles in the back, and it has a cane seat. It is a beautiful chair. And I sat on the back porch in bird poop. And Noreen, I don't care nothing about that, Margaret. I said, I know you don't. I said, just leave me your money when you die. Tight, she's tight. But I've had a good life. I really have. I have. And it's taken me most of life to realize what a wonderful place I grew up and live in. Yeah. There's nothing I love any better than down in Carteret County. Yeah. And I wasted so many years trying not to let people know I was from down in Carteret County. Because when I grew up, that was just not the place to come from.
Did you ever try to change how you talked?
Oh, yes. I remember the first time I ever went to California, I went to see a friend, and she was going with this Greek doctor. He did not speak very good English. And he kept making fun of the way I talked. And it was ticking me off bad. And I was thinking to myself, what right have you got to say anything? I was born here. I can't understand you. So I quit talking. I spent 3 weeks in California, and the person I talked to was Marshall. Because every time I open my mouth, people look at me and laugh. Made me mad. So when I started working in Moorhead, I have lost a lot of my accent, and I'm sorry I have. I started changing the way I talk, because Tarfar is 2 words. I have tried very hard to put an I in. And I still say tar and far. I don't care if it's far off or it's a fire that's burning the haystack. You know, they're my ones that I really had tried, and I finally had just give up, and it's tar and far. I don't care if people understand me or not.
That's right.
That's their problem, not mine.
That's
my
right.
brother says. But I used to go.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Well, there were 7 of them. His, hers, and theirs.
Okay. What was your full-blooded brothers and sisters? Okay,
I got a half-brother whose name is Walton Morday, and they call him Banky.
Banky?
Yeah, Banky.
Okay.
You ask anybody down east, especially Cedar Island, they know who you're talking about. Okay. Aggravating man. My oldest brother, his name is Ray Lewis. He's a Daniels. Mm-hmm. I had 2 half-sisters. One of them was Mary Irene Starn, and the other one was Helen Earl. She's named after Daddy. Helen Earl Piner. Mm-hmm. And the sister that's next to me is Jeanette Gillikin, and our youngest sister, Carol Rose, who died 2 years ago. Yeah. So that was us, his, hers, and theirs. Mm-hmm. We got along fine. But his couldn't stand hers, and hers couldn't stand his. But we kids got along great, so that's all that mattered.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, we were a crowd of us.
Did you ever take vacations?
Oh, Lord, yes. Most of my vacations was in the mountains with my mother.
How old were you then?
I was in my 20s.
In your 20s.
Where I was working and making some money and had a little vehicle. Mm-hmm. And I'd go every month. Me and Mother would go to Virginia to see my sister.
Oh, so she moved to Virginia.
Yep. That's where her husband worked. He was in dredge boater. But me and Mother would go to the mountains. And I couldn't get away from vacation without Mother. She was right there. You had to understand my mother. You said go, she was there before you were. And I used to take my nieces and nephews. We'd go, after they moved back to North Carolina, we'd go to Maryland and see my brother somewhere. I'd take them to the mountains, or we'd go to Ocracoke. I'd take them over to Ocracoke and spend a week over there.
Oh, that's not bad, is it?
Nope. But I have a horrible sense of direction. And my mother has no sense of direction.
Uh-oh.
And off we went when I was going to Virginia to get my brother-in-law to work on a car because there was something wrong with it. And so I had worked the night before, and off we headed to Virginia. And I had been up there 100,000 times. Knew my way without even opening my eyes. Mm-hmm. And Mother said, well, this is the way bank goes. And I turned and took off. Not even thinking. I guess I was super tired. So we drove and we drove and we drove and we drove and we drove. And I kept thinking, I don't know where in the world I'm at. And when I finally recognized a cornstalk that I had seen at least a dozen times, I realized we were lost. I had been going around and around and around these cornfields.
Oh my gosh.
I had no idea where we were at. So I finally this little old store. It was a little old store. I got out and walked in, and I looked at the man. I said, where am I at? He said, Englehart. I said, Englehart? How did I get to Englehart? He said, I don't know, honey. Where'd you start from? And where are you going? And I told him. He said, well, how'd you get here? I said, I don't know.
Oh, my gosh. Englehart. You had to be really lost to get
I had been driving.
It's a pretty town, but my gosh.
I had been driving about 4 hours for an hour and a half trip. So anyway, he got me out of there. So went and had the car worked on there in Virginia. My brother-in-law and his dad. Headed home that Sunday because I had to work that night. I had just pulled out of my sister's house and onto an interstate when I accelerated, and the motor accelerated, but the car didn't. And I said, oh my God, I have lost the transmission. My mother does not know how close she came that day of dying when she turned around and said, well, Margaret, I don't see it. The urge to kill was so strong. I thought I would die. No, Mother, that's not exactly what I meant. So I was so upset by this. I pulled under overpass. It was hot, and it was cool there. I said, I'm going to walk to a telephone and call Jeanette. I didn't have sense enough to realize she was only half a mile behind me. I walked 6 miles to get to a telephone, and she was only half a mile behind me.
Well, you know, when you get upset like that. Yeah.
And when I got back to my mother, she said, sure, I'm so glad to see you. I've been worried this place was going to fall down on me. I said, oh, I could have been mugged, killed. It made no difference. You worried about overpass. But yes, sir. No, I have laughed about that so much. You know, when my mother died, well, every year at the day reunion, we honor somebody at Cedar Island. So my bright sister, one year, raised that hand. We want to do Mother. Well, I knew I was going to have to do it. Not we. It was going to be me. And I punched her inside. Well, we do. I said, no, we don't. So I worked on it. My mother was a very stern lady. You know, she did not have mothering qualities like some mothers do, but it's all loving and not my mother. You know, don't get me wrong, I love my mother, but
absolutely,
you know, and I kept thinking, and my mother and me, we fought like cats and dogs because we were so much alike. I said, what am I supposed to say nice about my mother? I mean, I can't get up there and say, oh, she was the best mother in the world, she loved me to death. That's not true. That's not going to happen. So I said, let me think. So I started thinking of all the funny things that had happened on these trips of ours. And I got tickled. So I started writing them down. And that was what I did for Mother.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And everybody had the best time. One of the things was, not only did Mother have no sense of direction, she didn't have no idea what car was what. She knew a color and that was it. Carried her to town one day to the grocery store. I went in, got my groceries, come back, got the car. An hour I sat waiting for her, and here she comes out, walks past my car, goes to the car beside me, opens the back door, puts the groceries in, closes the door, gets on the, and I'm sitting 3 feet from her, gets in the passenger seat, cranks the window down, and looks over and waves at me. I said, no, okay. And smiles and waves at me. And I'm thinking, what? And about the time she started to light up a cigarette, I said, maybe I better get her out of the... And Mother! She said, what are you doing over there in that car, Margaret? I said, that's just my car? Oh, I thought this was it. I was wondering why you were sitting over there. I said, oh, God. We had the best time that day at the church. Someone wanted me to say, you wasted your time being a nurse. You should have been a comedian.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
I said, I love people to laugh.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
But,
it's good medicine. Hey, it's still nursing.
It is in its own way.
Yeah.
But my daddy used to, after he retired, he raised oysters in an oyster bed. And I mean,
he had an oyster garden.
Yeah, he had the prettiest oysters. $1.50 a bushel. And he would call them out. And they were as big as your hand, bigger. There in Williston. Mm. He and Uncle Folklorist. $1.50. And that was hard work in the wintertime.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
So
you like to eat oysters too, huh?
Huh?
Do you like to eat oysters?
Oh, yeah. Don't like clams, but I love oysters.
And I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Clams, they have to be fried.
Don't want no kind of clam, shape, or form. Nothing. I just never could cultivate a taste for them.
Clam chowder I can deal with, too.
No.
If it's a good clam chowder.
Yeah.
Now, my Aunt Hazel in Davis, Hazel Williams, she can make the best clam chowder. Oh, my gosh. My mother was sick. Talk about mothers. She had bypass surgery, and Aunt Hazel brought her this big thing of clam chowder, you know. And Mother just sipped it a little bit, you know. She says, that's all I want. I said, are you sure? Because you ain't going to see any more.
Yeah, here. I got one here. I understand. When I was growing up in Williston, my brother-in-law, well, he shrimped for a living. You know, and I tell people, especially when I talk to them here at the museum about how things has changed, and especially in our culture and heritage section, and I call that the place who we were, who we're not, and who we probably never will be again. You know, about duck hunting and boat building, and especially about commercial fishermen. Because Williston is settled on Jarrett Bay, and they closed Jarrett Bay at the first of shrimping because that's where all the little shrimps breeding and stuff. And it's not a very big bay. And when they'd open it up, we would go down, a lot of us would, and sat to the edge of the water in our cars and watch them shrimp, because you could almost walk across the water from boat to boat. There was so many in there.
Wow. And
I remember one summer, my brother-in-law, that was before you had the nets like they are today. They say I had a board on it. It was a single net that every boat had. You didn't have double outriggers and stuff. It was pulled behind. He put that net overboard, and you could see the boat start. The back of it was going down.
Oh,
dang! And he was trying to pull that net up, and he couldn't get it up. And so some boats come to him. There were so many shrimp in that net, it almost sunk his boat.
Wow. Wow.
They had to put the shrimp in 3 different boats. There were so many shrimp in that boat net. I think it was something like almost 500 pounds. That 25 cents a pound is what they got for them. But I will never forget that. It was the most amazing sight I had ever seen in my life. And everybody that night caught hundreds and hundreds of shrimp.
Yeah. Now, Williston used to be a big lumber place. Do you remember a sawmill or anything?
Mr. Pointer, I can't remember Mr. Pointer's first name now. He had a sawmill on the other side of the bridge, right across from the Nassau Road. That was Dennis Pointer's daddy. And he would...
was his name Lige? I can't remember.
No, that was Lige Pointer. Lige Pointer's from Smyrna.
Smyrna.
Yeah, 2 different ones. What was his name? I can't remember.
That's all right.
Mr. Pointer's about as good as I'm going to get. I can't remember anybody's name.
And I heard that Jarrett was a Scottish guy who was probably a shoe cobbler. I mean, you know,
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know how Jarrett Bay got its name.
Yeah, I think it was from this one man.
You know, I was always fascinated. You know, I tell people, you know, Julian Guthrie got his start under an oak tree here on the island.
Yeah.
And then he moved to Williston, the High Tide Boat Works.
Right.
And he sold High Tide Boat Works to Randy Ramsey, who named it Jarrett Bay Boat Works. And that's how the big Jarrett Bay Boat Works got its name. Was from that little bay there in Williston.
How about that?
You know, because Williston, you know, I drive through Williston now and there's nothing there. Absolutely nothing to distinguish it from anything in this world.
You know, I've always thought it was a shame about the clam house. That should be a monument because of all the dignitaries and everything that happened.
I mean, Elmer
Dewey Willis was a man of means and smarts
and smarts, and he was an inventor. I mean, he was for years and years the only supplier for clam chowder to Campbell soup.
Yeah, and Heinz. Heinz too.
You know, he invented that shucking machine.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he was the first person to freeze dry seafood.
How about that?
You know, with nitrogen.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And that was sad in a way. Because the sadness was they had a boy working there, and everybody went home for supper. And the boy was what you term maybe a little slow. And they had told him not, and the nitrogen building had a trap door in it for some reason. And they had told him not to stick his head, because they had seen him messing with it, in that trap door. It would kill him. And when they come back from their suppers, he still had a sandwich in his mouth, had his head in that trap door, and he was dead.
Oh my God.
You know, and it just took the life right out of Elmer. And he quit freeze-drying. Quick freeze, you know. Like stops. They run off the conveyor belt, we run them onto another conveyor belt, and they run through that nitrogen, and it was hard as a rock. And you put them in boxes and ship them off, you know. But, you know, there was always been a nursery on and off for a long time. But there was a sawmill, there was a little soda shop, and there was Elmer's, and there was the post office beside it, and there was the store, and there was the boat house, you know, and that distinguished Williston. You're right through there now, and there's not a thing in the world. It does not look no more like the place where I grew up than anything in this world.
Did you know Larry Falcher?
Of course, I grew up with Larry Falcher. He was part of the gang.
He was a dear friend. He came up to me during the seafood festival one time, and he had just gotten back from being hurt on that barge. And the only thing he knew how to do was build a little boat. And I was at the time on the board, seafood festival board, and he came up to me and he told me his predicament. And he had a book of pictures. And I said, "Oh my God, Larry, these are beautiful. These are wonderful." You know, I said, "Just come up here and if you'll just whittle on something, you can sell as many books as you want." That's not the way it was supposed to work, but he was desperate. And then I tried to get him in the Arts and Craft Guild, and he was doing that, and he was doing really well. And I really saw him, because of his age, being the continuation of like James Allen Rose. You know, because his boats were so, I mean, you know, they were just perfect. I mean, you know, and when he came the Christmas before he died, he came to the Maritime Museum, and he brought me a round stern core sounder as a gift.
Wow.
I cried like a baby, you know, and he was going, "What's the matter?" I said, you know, had a pawl post on it, a little dog house on it, you know, and round stern, and he even had a little water barrel in it. I mean, it was just perfect. And he named it Native.
How about that?
And it was gorgeous, and I just couldn't think of enough. And my father died that New Year's Eve. And so it was the same kind of boat that my father, so we put it at the funeral home.
How about that? Yeah, that's neat.
And then in a couple of months, he was dead.
Yeah, Larry's pretty bad off there for a while.
I just didn't realize that he was so sick.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, but he, every time, now see, when you were talking about going through Williston, I think of the loss